We've lived here in Twillingate for the past 16 years. I grew up here and moved to Labrador City, where I lived for over 30 years. When I grew up here, all of those arbors all froze over in the wintertime. When we had snow, it came in the fall and it stayed until spring. Now, those harbors never freeze over. We could run cars on those harbors. Last winter, the snow would come, then the rain, freezing rain. You can't do winter things like you could when I grew up here. I remember when I was 14 years old, I got new skates for Christmas. And that Christmas, we skated all Christmas onto saltwater ice. That summer, there was a pod of orcas. And that was almost unheard of in those waters. Now you see orcas all summer long because the water is warmed up so much. Tourism is, I think it started with the icebergs. Now the icebergs we don't see often as many, not nearly as many. I think the climate has changed so much that by the time they get this far, they've broken up and drifted off. When we bought this place, the old gentleman lived in that house. He went up one morning in the year 2000 and he sat on the bench up on that top of that hill and he counted 102 icebergs in this bay. This summer we got two. Instead of 2 summers before that we had none. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference. Yeah.
Typically, it's the highest temperature is around 25 to 30. That's in Celsius. I don't know Fahrenheit because we're in Canada.
Oh, students can recalculate.
Okay, awesome. And it gets down to minus 40 in the winter. I've been told though that in the past it was minus 50, minus 60 was a bit more common, and hot temperatures were less common. In terms of water, it's a pretty dry place, but we're starting to see a bit more moisture and precipitation as things change. We have what's called permafrost here, meaning the ground is permanently frozen to a certain depth. The ground is like a frozen steak, and typically in the past that steak would stay frozen, but now what we're seeing is the water thawing out of the steak, so in this case the ground and the soil, and it's changing the structure of the soil.
It's also true if it's tofu and not steak.
Yes.
Right, in your example?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because we won't go vegetarian with the example. The flat land is slipping downward toward this creek here, partially because of melting of the permafrost underneath the layers of the earth here. You can see in the creek there's some areas where the earth is breaking off and falling in and across the way.
With permafrost thaw, it's methane especially is being released into the atmosphere, which is then contributing to our overall greenhouse gas emissions, and then that contributes to global warming, which then circles back and creates more permafrost thaw. So it's sort of this this loop that is self-perpetuating. So then when we've built a lot of structures on that ground, those buildings are really becoming wobbly and changing. And the further you drive north, the more permafrost there is. So you might see quite a few buildings in Dawson and further up that are completely really leaning, and it's very obvious. Here in the Yukon, it's a big problem because a lot of communities are built on permafrost. So we're seeing schools, hospitals, homes shifting.
My appreciation to Canada, I am drinking Canada Dry. I don't know if it's made here or not.
I think so.
You think so?
Yeah, I don't know.
Look on there. I bet
it's made in America.
Do you think a Canadian actually owns it?
No.
I don't think
Maybe
so.
the Canadian government.
It doesn't say, so it's probably in the States.
Yeah.
But it's distributed by somewhere in Texas. Produced under authority of. Yeah, so it's made in the U.S. But maybe a Canadian owns the license.
Hopefully. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you actually drink that here?
Yep.
Oh.
Oh yeah. It's very good. Yeah.
Okay. It's imported.
I learned from really brilliant scientists and knowledge holders here in the Yukon about what's going on with the climate here, but also things like floods and wildfire. I'd say the bulk of my job is more creating policies that are reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. So things like promoting energy efficiency in buildings, so we need to heat them less. Zero emissions vehicles. The bulk of our emissions here, over half of them, come from transportation because we're so far away, and we need to drive a lot, but we also need to ship up goods by the road. So a lot of policies to look at that.
Hi, Barney. Look, it's the Arctic Ocean. The Arctic Ocean. It's freshwater. You are from here? Grew up
Lived
here?
here 48, all my whole 48 years.
Ooh, I don't want to walk there.
It's all right, but it's just every year the more and more erosion happens here. The land was over 150 feet out. In the last month, I lost maybe 20 feet.
So are there other houses out here?
Houses located all down this stretch here.
Wow.
And they relocated 4 houses 2.5 years ago. There's one house was right at the edge of that.
So they tried to protect it, it looks like, at one time?
Yeah, but you gotta do something to do it right. I mean, you could just throw some boulders, whatever they have here.
Right.
It's gonna be big boulders and they
Yeah.
don't go right.
So are the houses sinking here? I know some places they are.
A lot of them that are on pilings, they're starting to shift. The buildings, the houses. I never really thought about climate change until you see it happening. Noticing more and more. It's a lot of damage.
Losing some trees out here.
That's a joke. We never did have trees.
Oh, that's what I thought. I know there's some trees on the way in, so-called trees, the boreal forest.
House here. And there used to be a government building here. There's a couple houses down. One was half away in the water, and the other ones are pretty close to going to the. When we had the big storm, this whole road was under the water here.
Because this part of the road flooded, or might flood.
Yeah, the water comes pretty damn close here.
So you think I should come back in winter?
You want, yeah?
I'm thinking about it.
And 1 month of darkness in there. December 1st to about the 4th of January.
Yeah,
7th.
completely dark, huh?
Yeah, it's just dark.
Do you see any changes in fishing over your life? Is there more fish or less fish or any difference?
I don't think there's more or less, but we're just fishing at a different time. Follow the thaw and freeze every year. It's changed, freezes later and thaws earlier now. We travel on the ice, but it's a little later every year, but we can have access to it. If you never had a calendar, you'd still know that it's winter, spring, summer, fall. That hasn't changed. But the time we go out has changed if you're following a calendar. Climate change, it means erosion, so we have eroding beaches. And you see some big boulders behind you that had to be brought in to do for shoreline protection. Moving infrastructure for probably 30 years further inland. As something is built, it gets built a little further inland. So we're adapting slowly, just as fast as we're building, we're slowly moving inland. So there is a big mitigation program going to happen within the next probably 2 years. They're gonna try to preserve what shoreline we have.
You often hear the term siloed in government, at least in Canada, and so there's all these boundaries between the different offices and arms of government.
Yeah.
It's within the territorial government here, and we are meant to sort of be across, we're like a secretariat, so a hub.
We used to be further out in the communities we used to live in are now eroded away. We moved here up the coast. There are communities that are no longer there, where we had traditional villages, but we're adaptive people.
I declined to move because
We have some time.
I'm good couple of years. But I like this area.
Yeah, well, I don't blame you. It's beautiful.
As a harvester, we're not struggling, but as a community, we are.
And we're really pushing to, we can call it mainstreaming climate change and make it understood that it's impacting every aspect of life, and all of our actions are also contributing to it.
We have to move and develop new areas, and that costs a lot of money. For a small community or 1,000 people, that's non-tax based, it's a challenge.
So you dumped fish out there to help the birds?
Yep, the carcasses and the guts and skins, they all get their share of fish. All summer people feed them. They come up and they lay their eggs, and we get a good return of eggs from all the gulls that come up here. The eggs in the store are good, but they're expensive and not as good as the wild eggs we get.
So what are the stores like here as far as cost and the quality of the food?
It's expensive. Quality is not always great because anything that they got to bring up here has got to be frozen first. And the fresh meat, if it's brought up unfrozen, it's usually already getting old. Our country food is much more available. It just costs a bit of time, and it's way more nutritious. there's a season for everything. Right now people are just fishing. In July we whale. Rely on whales. In the spring we hunt snow geese and all the different species of birds. In the winter we go for caribou, moose, and bears.